Rev up your engine. '2007 Corvette. It's base model. He put the stripes on. It's still the only two-seater open roadster that's made in the United States. They've never sold all that many. One year they sold 700. Their tops was 50-something thousand. Last year they sold like 20,000 when they went to the mid-engine in the back. But this is a classic one. You can have a lot of fun with one of these things, yet you don't have to go bananas. Now this is a C6. And everybody says, laughs at him, oh, why didn't you get the bigger one with 500 horsepower plus? Well, you're going to see when I drive it, this has 400 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. It's got plenty of oomph. Matter of fact, since it's an older vehicle, it's got too much oomph because they are rear-wheel drive. The engine is in the front, and they will fishtail like mad if you start driving like a maniac, just like the old Mustangs did. They're relatively dependable. He did have to change the harmonic balancer at 20-something thousand miles because it's a design flaw of these things. Now, this guy's like me. He's not a fanatic. Looks nice. He's never cleaned under the hood ever in 16 years. It still looks good, but he's not one of those crazy guys that gets his toothbrush out and starts brushing his motor like the lunatics do. Realize this. This guy had an old Camaro in the 70s. It had 170 horsepower. Check out this Mazda CX-5, a little cross runarounder, right? This thing's got 184 horsepower. You realize 400 horsepower in a little car like this is a lot of horsepower. Now in this year, one of the reasons he didn't get the Z06 was because only the top comes off on this. He wanted one that the top came off on. It's more or less men's go-karts. Yeah, I've seen women driving around. I even know a woman in Tennessee who owns one, and it's her baby. But by and large, these are men cars. They're only two-seaters. Well, women want to get married and have kids. That kind of shoots that idea out. He even told me he wished he could drive this more. But he's got to take the kids to school. He can't fit them in there. And then his wife wouldn't even let him bring the kid over here because she said, you're not taking a kid in that thing with a top down in an open seater here. That's not safe enough. Well, to kind of prove a point, the guy just admitted that's his ex-wife. Wives and Corvettes really don't go together. But being a classic roadster, you got a big old V8 in the front, a transmission in the middle, and rear-wheel drive. These things are a hoot to drive around. We'll start it up. Turn off the radio. Who needs a radio? Just even making it hard to turn radios off. Finally, it's a button on the top. You'd think volume would be up here, but I don't know. They've gone nuts with these things. If we look around, we can see he watches my videos because he got himself a D7X tool, which is a pretty decent scan tool. Now, since these things have a tendency to swirl, even this is a 16-year-old car, you can see it's got traction control, but as you can see, you can also turn it off if you want. And it warns you, traction system off. The only real mod he's done is the exhaust. He didn't like the tiny exhaust, so he added that on. And man, it sounds a lot better. That engine's smooth. Are the keys shaking? No. Still nice and quiet 16 years later. Although truth be told, he had to change the strut supports because he was tired of them sitting up there and falling on his head. So it doesn't do that anymore. So away we go. As you can see, it's got a nice race setup. You can see all the information that you want. I turned the traction control off. Got some faux carbon fiber. It's just a fun little go-kart to drive around. If you want to shift it yourself, you can. But when you do, there's a little delay. Watch. See, there's a little delay in the shifting. It's not like a real standard transmission. You can fool around with it, but you know, most guys just leave it in regular drive and drive it around. So let's see what this thing can do. This is why people drive these things, because they're fun. Let's face it, it's a perfect vehicle, topless vehicle to take to the beach. And I'll tell you something else. Okay, when I was a kid, my neighbor had an early 60s Vette. It rode like a tank. It had a clutch that you needed 2 feet to push down. So it's kind of hard getting 2 feet on the clutch and 1 on the accelerator. This thing is so smooth and easy to drive, and they ride so much better than the older ones did. For my money, this is one of the better years that you can get. Before there was too much high technology, when they're still better built. 400 horsepower is plenty enough. If you're a maniac, go ahead, get the 500 plus horsepower one. But you're gonna be plenty happy enough driving one of these things around, and it's not like the new ones. They don't have wheels that crack. They don't have transmissions that leak fluid like the new ones did. You can get a lot cheaper than you can get the new ones. They're just overpricing them, just way too high. 16-year-old car. It's got a whopping 36,000 miles. Now, even though this is an older car, you can see, look, it's got a pop-up speedometer there, so you can see the speedometer in front. You don't have to take your eye off the road. I always like those things. Now, they still got the regular one, but the pop-up one comes in real handy if you're driving seriously, especially when you look at the tachometer there. And this particular one, I think it's a good year when you combine the difference between the handling. It still has some old technology. It hasn't gone space age like the modern one where all this crazy stuff. It knows where you are, so it lifts the body up in the air to go over the bump in your driveway automatically. I mean, and all that stuff's going to break, right? This is a plain, simple car. I took the traction control off because I know how to drive and it's more fun. You can put the traction control on. I would advise putting the traction control on if you're driving in the snow, regardless of how good you are as a driver. It won't save you entirely. You still got to know what you're doing. But they're fun little toys to drive around in. And as long as you do like he does and take care of it, not put 1,000,000 miles on them, if you're going to buy one, before you do anything, once the deal's done, have the vehicle appraised. Put a rider on your insurance, because a 16-year-old car is a 16-year-old car. If you wreck it and you don't have that rider on your insurance, oh, we'll give you 12 grand for the car. It's an old car. It's all wrecked. No, you gotta do that. But on the plus side, I've got guys that insure them for classics for less than $500 a year. Now they say, well, you can only drive it 4,000 miles a year, yada, yada. One, a lot of guys don't drive it that much anyways, but you can always look into that if you're older. And of course, you can have a lot of fun like he did. He put on newer wheels because he liked them, and he went with the bigger 6-pot brakes because he didn't like the original ones. He didn't think they were strong enough. There is so much aftermarket stuff for these things. And if you're a mind to getting used stuff, a lot of people wrap these around trees, so the junkyards have numerous parts that are still in good shape that you can buy relatively cheaply and modify them up. There's a lot of different parts from different models you can swap back and forth. You don't have to, but if you want to, you can. And it isn't going to cost you a fortune if you go used, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wheels are wheels, brakes are brakes. You can see them if they're rusty or not. Save a lot of money and customize it to the way you want to. For example, these are brand new old stock. He traded in his own wheels, and with buying tires and everything, he said it ended up only costing him about $100 a tire. So that's not a bad deal. You can always look around. There's always stuff available for Corvettes. They've been around a long time, and they'll probably be a long time in the future. They'll still make them. Maybe they'll electrify them. Who knows? Hopefully, they won't do that soon, maybe later, because the way they seem to be making things cheaper, I'm leery. I see too many problems with the modern mid-engine Vettes to ever tell somebody to buy one. I tried them out. They were fun. They were cool, but stuff's always breaking on them, and they're new now. Look at this thing, 16 years old. You drive this thing, it doesn't feel any different than it did 16 years ago, really. They can hold up. It's proof. Who knows what's going to happen to the new one 16 years from now? This is proof that they can last. Fiberglass bodies, you don't have to worry about the body rusting on them. So, maybe not a bad idea if you got a little money to spend and want to have some fun driving a go-kart. And if you get tired of it, you can always pass it on and not lose a small fortune like you will if you buy most new vehicles and then decide, I didn't like it. Once this used car fantasy of them costing more than new cars goes away, it'll go back to the olden days when you pay 15, 20 cents on a dollar for a used car versus a new one. And hilariously enough, when he bought this car new, it was the price of an average car today. An average new car in America is close to $50,000 now, the average one. And that's what he paid for this thing when it was new. Now, it was 16 years ago, money was a little different. But to have something like this, it's still worth a lot of money, a lot of fun to drive. Everybody knows I'm not a GM fan, but this is a GM of a different feather. It's older, and it's their showcase car. Before they went totally computerized, they could be a real headache to work on then when all that stuff starts going out. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.